Hey, everybody, welcome. Your saltwater guide, Captain Dave Hansen. We got a good one for you today. We got Cliff Gray joining us. He just had a phenomenal hunt. We'll talk about him and who his guests were that he took hunting. But before we get started, gang, I want to thank Deckhand Sports. Without Deckhand Sports, we can't do this Friday show. We can't bring in all these great guests. We'll show you a little video from Dave and the gang over at Deckhand Sports a little later in the show. If you guys want to get any of the products over there at Deckhand Sports, grab that QR code Elliot just threw up on the screen, and you're going to save 15% on all the products. When you go to the website, you will not believe the phenomenal amount of products Dave and the gang at Deckhand Sports have been fishing for their whole lives, and they know what we need and how we need it and when, and the products are designed for us. Pretty much the products are designed by fishermen for fishermen. So you got to check it all out. We'll show you a cool little video in a little bit all about the great kill bag. I'm sure Cliff will have some things to say about the bags because he is big time into hunting and fishing, just like all of us that are watching the show today. Cliff Gray takes it to a whole different level. So without any further ado, let's get this show started, Elliot. Let's bring Cliff in and let's see where he's been and what. Hey, buddy.
What's up, man?
Where have you been?
So I have been, let's see, like all of September I guided for the most part. So I guided some in Eastern Oregon, and then I guided the last 10, 15 days in Northern New Mexico. So just elk hunting, you know what I mean? But I do have to say, Dave, when you mentioned the deckhand bags, I've got one sitting in Puerto Rico, and I'm headed down there in like a month. And dude, I feel so bad because I got it right before I came to the States, and I'm just waiting to get some fish in that thing. So it's sitting in my house in Puerto Rico. I'll be back there spearfishing probably like I guess less than 3 weeks now. So I will I'll get some bloody pictures of that thing.
Well, yeah, because last time you were on the show, Dave was watching and he got involved, and then you guys got to touch base with each other. So yeah, I'm glad you hooked up. And I'm glad
yeah, dude, and I had a killer trip set up to go. I was going to go tuna spearfishing in Panama, and unfortunately, I had some family health related things that canceled that trip. So that bag's just been waiting there.
Just waiting to get filled up, and I know you're going to fill it up. So you've taken this hunting thing, and then you evolved it over into spearfishing, and it's kind of almost the same, right? Kind of like,
yeah. I mean,
though.
That's the thing, Dave. It's like I think in more and more as I've gotten older, all the stuff the same to me, man. Like rod and reel, like to me, there's not that much difference between rod and reel fishing and hunting. I think that's like sounds kind of crazy to a lot of people. To me, like the fundamental reason for doing it is all the same. So to me, hunting, rod and reel fishing, spear fishing, they're all the same. I tend to, enjoy spear fishing and then hunting more personally or but that's just my personal preference. I do all of them. Like my little boy, all he wants to do is rod and reel fish. So we do a ton of that. And so I'm up for all of it, man. And I honestly, Dave, I wish more guys were. I think too many guys, it could be marketing. I don't know what it is like in the world. They get where they have to go elk hunting, or they have to go, they got to go bill fishing. It's like, man, there might be something closer to you that's easier, more accessible to you. Why not do that? It's all fun.
Oh, absolutely. The thing, I was watching some of your content this morning, and you had the binoculars. That's video you posted this morning, that you had your binoculars and you were like looking and you go, I don't normally do this, but
yeah.
And I'm like, all day, every day when I was running boats for a living, that's all I did was stare in the binoculars, the gyro stabilizing binoculars, the $6,000 pair of binoculars. And it made your whole life revolves around those binoculars. And when you don't have them up to your face for a few minutes, when someone's talking to you, you're like, what am I missing? And it's back to the binoculars. And I started to think about fishing is exactly like hunting. You're just spending hours and hours and hours looking for that trophy, for that thing, for that whatever it is, that piece of seaweed, the piece of eelgrass, whatever it is that's going to be holding a fish. And it's got to be I hunted once with my son. We went pig hunting, and we went pig hunting in a 4x4, and
Sure.
he would look out the side of the guide. He would look out the side and he'd go, "There's a whole bunch on the hill over there," and we
Go
go,
shoot one.
"Okay," get off and start walking. And then I was like, okay, I can relate to this. It kind of goes hand in hand. The same thing has to be when you're out fishing, when you're out diving. You probably are putting together the puzzle kind of like the same way. You're like looking for where that fish is hiding.
Oh yeah. Well, and the other thing, Dave, like, and this is something that I have noticed. It's weird, man. Like, I've actually been off and on spearfishing for a big chunk of my life now. Like, I used to dive for abalone when I was in college on the northern coast of California when that season was open. So I mean, that's got to be like 10 years ago, right? When they closed it or whatever. But having said that, it's an off and on thing, and I feel like there's always this overlap that you learn. Like even now, if I'm blue water spearfishing, like diving for wahoo, when you're in the water, you learn a ton about the species because you literally see how they approach. Like we use flashers. Yeah, there's a wahoo there. Like we use flashers when we're spearfishing, right? So and they look just like they're just they can be anything, but they're basically a big shiny lure. And when you're diving on that, watching it, and you see wahoo come to it, you do that enough, you start to realize like, oh, this is how they hunt. Like they approach, they're gonna like, so it's applicable to however you're rod and reel fishing them too. And then also you realize like, oh, every time when we're diving, we drift over like this specific type of structure. And you see like, it's cool, right? Because if you're drift diving, right, and you're spearfishing and you're above structure, you could be in, like 1,000 feet of water, but there's a piece of structure that comes up within a couple 100 feet of the water. When you're over that structure, because as you chum, this swirl of the fish ecosystem starts to arise, right? And you start to realize like, oh, okay, every time I see those fish, these other fish show up. And then you start to get a sixth sense of like, oh, it's like real fishy, like a wahoo's going to show up. You know what I mean? And to me, that kind of like when I am on a boat, rod and reel fishing, it's amazing how much overlap there is, man. It's pretty crazy. There's a lot of analogies like that in hunting versus fishing too. It's like, I don't know how to, other than just generically say it's, every little thing, just become a better outdoorsman, I guess is what I'd say.
Yeah, everything matters. That's what I talk about on my website all the time when we're putting together the game plan for everybody on Thursday afternoon. I try to describe to everybody, when you get out there, yeah, we're going to tell you the best case scenario, what's going to happen when you get there, but you got to pay attention to everything around you. And I'm sure the same thing goes when you're under the water diving. You might have had the greatest game plan in the world. You jump in the water and you look to your right and there's, wait a minute, something's going on over there. I'm swimming over there today.
Yeah, sure.
And you got to be aware, like you said, of your surroundings and putting the puzzle together, and years and years and years of doing the fishing thing, years and years of doing the hunting thing. You can put the puzzle together in your head. And I don't know, I never got into spearfishing. I just always been a rod and reel guy. And a lot of my friends are into spearfishing. My buddy Brent's on here right now. He's into spearfishing big time and into being under the water. I should have done it, but I didn't. Now I'm 63 and I'm too fat and old. I couldn't get back on the boat, but look at that. That looks so.
Oh yeah.
Here, I can see what's going on. There's a shark though.
Yeah.
Hello. Okay.
Yeah. You guys got, if you're rod and reel fishing, you're familiar with that whole dynamic too, the whole shark thing. But no, you know what's weird about it, Dave? Is like, and I would say like I'm still, mid-level spear fisherman, but I've been lucky enough to be around some guys that are like, they've been doing that their whole life. And I've noticed this across the board, man, is like hunters, like on specific species, rod and reel guys, and then spear fishermen. When you get around a guy that's had like millions of reps, they have like a woo-woo sixth sense of like, they just know. Like, I bet if I go fishing with you and you're in one of the spots that like, when it's going to be good. And there's like, your brain is correlating 90 variables together and it's just telling you like, oh, dude, It's good. And that's like a personal goal on all this shit that I do, man. That's a personal goal. Like I'm not there on a lot of things, but it's kind of like trying to achieve that ability to just, you've done it enough times, you can just bring it all together and like, okay, we're in the right spot. It's just a matter of time. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. Kind of, there's a lot of people that don't know who you are that are jumping on here and they're leaving some comments. Kind of
Sure.
just give everybody a background of why you and I got connected, why we became friends, because I consider you a friend now, and you are a big time elk hunter. I mean, when I saw you with Joe Rogan, I was like, whoa, you're like at a totally different level that I even knew. Because Rogan and you were talking about some wild stuff, and I was like, but I know this guy. Wait a minute. So kind of just give everybody kind of an idea who you are, because we just jumped in, started talking about fishing and diving, but this guy is an amazing human being. Gang, if you've ever thought about hunting, and my good friend Justin Botrell that works for me is a guide, and he also owns his own charter boat, and we've been kind of buddies for a very long time. He's a big time hunter, and he was super excited that you're going to be
cool.
on the show again. He's going to try to jump in for a few minutes. He's fixing his heat exchanger on his boat right now, but just give everybody a clue of what your background is, because it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I mean, so primarily what I'm known for, Dave, is well, nowadays it's the YouTube channel you just put up. So I have a YouTube channel that's pretty much oriented towards helping people become better elk hunters. I try to do some spearfishing content on there too, but just historically, my audience, and then I had a business in the wilderness of Colorado, and I did a bunch of stuff in British Columbia too. And I ran that business for a dozen years, as an actual operating outfitter. Took it from a very small business to doing several hunts a year, several hundred hunts a year in both locations. So I built that up, and that's kind of, I guess, where my reputation was or is very much in the elk hunting space. You mentioned Rogan. A lot of people, that was like a big, I guess, boost to my my exposure, I suppose, and my exposure to him was through elk hunting. You know what I mean? And so that's been my reputation. But it's funny, Dave, because like I mentioned before, man, I like doing all this stuff, and more like my YouTube channel, all my social media is really, it's kind of built around, I would say, like if I could tell you who I speak to in my content, it's all about the guy who's, between 30 and 60. And for the most part, didn't have a dad or grandpa that took him hunting or fishing. And I just hope that like my content is exposure for those guys. And it's all oriented around that. Like you want to become a better elk hunter, you want to get introduced to spearfishing. That's what my content is. And that's who it's geared towards. I have there's a broader audience too. I do a lot of, butchering of animals and, how to field dress a deer, like the block and tackling of this outdoorsman stuff. But if I was going to say what it's oriented towards and kind of like as my brand is migrated, that's what it's oriented towards. Like you want to become a better hunter, outdoorsman. Hopefully my stuff helps you.
Oh, I watch your stuff all the time. Elliot and I were totally enthralled with your grizzly bear stuff.
Yeah.
What the heck? And then when you jumped on the show today and you tell Elliot there's a bear behind you, we both sat up a little straighter in our chair, right behind him, gang.
Oh yeah, that's a little one.
That one got in the way, right?
No, that was a special one. That was in a new area or whatever. It's kind of a cool bear. You can see he's got a mohawk.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
What's the deal with that?
It's just it's funny. I've gone like back and forth with a bunch of biologists on it, and it's just part of a color phase thing. It seems like it's just a genetic thing. Some bears have it, some don't. I used to think it was a younger bear thing, but then over the years I've like aged bears that either I shot or a client shot, and older bears get it too. So I just heard myself pop up on the audio. But yeah, no, it's just kind of a cool color that they get.
Yeah, it is. It's a very cool color. I just was up in Alaska a couple weeks ago. I don't know if you saw any of that, but
yeah, sure.
I got to see my first grizzly bear. That was pretty amazing. And there's a couple of guys on here that are watching. And here's what happened. We got out of the car because we saw him. Okay. And so did what you're not supposed to do. But I got out of the car because I saw him. And I thought he was going up the river. And the river we're fishing has a bunch of salmon in it. So I thought he was heading up the river. And I jumped out with my fishing pole. And I started to walk through the grass. And then, bam. 10 feet away from me, here's his head. And I was like a little girl, dude. I ran as fast as I could to the car, and the door was locked. And I'm screaming at my buddy inside, open the goddamn door. Mike Lewis, you weren't scared. Mike Lewis went right down to the river and started drone footage on him.
Good for him, dude. Because it's funny, Dave. Like I've been around him a lot, man. But you probably noticed this. They just look at you different. You know what I mean? Like those bears that you're around there on the rivers, they call them brown bears, but they're still grizzlies.
Yeah.
Same species. They just classify them different because they're exposed to fish, so they tend to be bigger. But dude, grizzlies, brown bears, whatever, they just look at you different. They kind of look right through your soul.
Right. That's exactly what it felt like. And it was so real and so surreal. And the dumbest thing I could have ever done, Cliff, was I went down the rabbit hole before we went up there, and me and Kelly were watching all these videos about grizzly attacks. The dumbest thing I could possibly do. It was, and then there he was. And I'm right on the other side of the river videoing that. And he just walks up to the side of he's eating the rest of the fish that he walked up there and got. He walked right up next to us and grabbed a fish. I don't even know how he did it. It's just, that's what they do for a living. I understand that, but it was pretty exciting. The whole time I was in Alaska, I was thinking about you because your buddy was on Rogan and he was talking about when they introduced the wolves back into Wyoming or Montana. I'm not sure, one of those two places, and how the elk, the little baby elks and everything now are getting eaten by these things. The same thing happened to Alaska when they reintroduced the otters. We're up there in Alaska and you can't get a crab. We thought we were going to get a bunch of crabs, and the place that we were at, there's no crabs. There's tens of thousands of sea otters that aren't supposed to be there now. And they've just devastated. And I was thinking about you and me talking after your buddy was on Rogan, talking about the wolves and how you got to be careful when you talk about it, because everybody loves the pretty little doggy out there in the forest.
Sure. I'm sure otters are the same way, man.
Oh,
they're cute. They're cute. So I'm sure they're like a hot topic up there.
It was so funny because Mike Lewis, his wife Jamie, and I and Ron were like so excited to see him. And then our guide Larry was like, "Oh, you guys, you're gonna run out of storage on your phone if you're taking pictures of these damn things. They're everywhere." And I was blown away. There's literally tens of thousands of them in just a small area, and there's nothing left on the bottom. They've eaten every clam, every rockfish. Here's another super evasive animal you and I talked about before. This animal is just destroying California.
Oh, the seals.
The
sea lions. Sorry.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite topics with you, to be honest, Dave. But all these things crack me up. The new one that I found, and I'm sure you have audience. You have some of your audience is in the know on this, and they're probably big fans of them as fly fishermen or whatever. And I was clueless, and that's carp. Elliot popped up that one picture of us with that load of carp that we speared in one of these lakes in Washington State. And dude, I had a couple short videos of me shooting carp, or a big carp on a spear shaft or whatever. And I've never gotten so much hate in my life. I was clueless.
It is. There's the picture.
Yeah, dude, I was clueless, Dave, that, in my mind, man, I grew up that if you caught a carp and you threw it back in the water, like people, like you were a piece of shit for doing that. Like you needed to throw the carp on the shore. That's how I grew up. And I thought I mean, I thought that was the norm until I realized that, oh, there's this contingency of people who are fly fishing them. You know, a lot of Europeans love them, you know, where I believe they're probably native there or they've naturalized or whatever. But dude, I'm always surprised. There's always these different species where you can't assume anything now, you know.
Oh yeah, whatever we do, it's going to piss somebody off. It doesn't even,
Yeah.
it's so sad. But the carp, horrible animal. They eat all the largemouth bass eggs. They eat all the trout. They're just a super invasive species, and they're horrible for the environment. And yeah, most lakes, if you got caught throwing them back, whoever's running their lake, they're going to be super pissed because that's a horrible animal. But yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm sure your content is so controversial as it is because you're taking food and people don't want you to take food, and you're teaching people how to cut up their food. I'm sure it's just a constant battle with the haters. There's so many. It's
Dude,
just,
I have to ask though, Dave, because you do a lot of like fish filleting stuff. Do you get that seems to be guarded from much hate. People do you get much crap on those?
we get so much, it's mind numbing.
Oh, you do? Okay.
And we also get these bans and Elliot and I, we just don't even understand it because we'll put out 5 in a row of us cutting up let's just say a dorado or a mahi or
sure
tuna. And there'll be 5 parts to it. And the first 4 parts will be way worse than the last part. And then the last part will get tagged on and say, oh, this is very offensive and da-da-da-da. And it's like, wait, what? Were you not watching this? And then like this video right now on Instagram, it's got 2.4 million views in less than a month. And you wouldn't believe now this guy, Jesse, he runs the fish plant up there at the lodger stand. He average day, he cuts 600 of these a day. And you would be blown away at how many people tell him he doesn't know how to do it. If you were to go down the rabbit hole and look at the tens of thousands of comments, all the people telling him he wastes the fish, he doesn't know what he's doing. Our knives aren't sharp. That's the thing that we have on a t-shirt too. Your knife's sharper than mine. The filleting videos, we get so much action on, and I'm sure you get the same thing on how to cut an elk.
Oh yeah, dude. So there's a bunch of really interesting things here. I think that are like maybe we could critique our just like our culture or maybe the human race at this point, because to me it's amazing that one of the most controversial things is related to cutting up meat or food. You know what I mean? And I run into the same thing, Dave, like same deal. It's kind of random, but I'll go through these periods where, anything meat processing related, field dressing stuff. It could be even my lobster stuff, pulling lobster tails off and that sort of thing. Even that it'll get me like, temporarily where none of my stuff gets exposed. And I find it crazy that it's an issue. Now, I will say that like some of my stuff, I get it. Like if I pull the heart out of an elk, I get that some people who aren't exposed to that, it might be like a little bit startling, but I'm kind of unapologetic about it. Like I'm pulling it out because I'm going to eat it. You know what I mean? And the video is for people who might find that interesting, might want to do it. And so to me, still, it's like, dude, how can this be controversial?
Yeah, in our world, it doesn't make any sense. Let's show that video real quick of the Deckhand Sports bag, Elliot, before we get any farther, because we're going to go down a rabbit hole here in a minute talking about cutting fish and elk up, and we're not coming back for a while. So check out this Deckhand Sports kill bag video real quick. So Cliff, tell everybody what caught, because you have this bag now. So what caught your eye on this bag? What made you want to have this bag? Because it's such a bitchin' bag, right?
Oh, the deckhand. So for me, Dave, a lot of times I'm spearing out of a ponga that doesn't have a place to put fish. So there's just that element of it. The other thing, and this is, I guess, a little bit, I don't know how I describe it, like a little vain or egotistical or whatever, but you know, those, he's got like bars in the bottom of it that keep
Yeah.
the fish out of the water, and the fish just retain their color better. So if you're taking pictures in your boat or anything like that, I find that if you leave them in the water once they're dead, the color just saps right out of them. But that keeps them up out of the water. You can take great pictures in the boat, and plus they're just not soaking in the bloody water. You know what I mean? So
Exactly.
those elements are huge. But the thing is just well built also.
Right, it leak proof and the tie down straps everywhere, and then those ridges in there that keeps the fish out of the water. That was what got me. That when I first saw that, I called Dave. I'm like, "What? I've been dealing with kill bags my whole life." I said, "What? Why didn't anybody else think of that? What?" Now there's a whole bunch of copycatters and everybody's starting to do it. But Dave was the first on the block to do it. That's what we carry our lobsters in when we leave the boats at night. That dry bag on his back.
Oh, okay.
And that's what I was carrying the salmon up when we would hike down to the river and then put the salmon in the bag and carry them out. Those dry bags are great. You could throw ice in them and carry everything around, and you don't get it leaking. I did it for years with the backpack, and just my back would be soaked all the time. But there's no other way to carry the stuff out of there. So that's a phenomenal product, gang. Check out Deckhand Sports. Elliot will throw the QR code up there one more time. You go over there to their website. You'll see all the stuff we're talking about. And you get to save 15% just because you're watching this podcast. So take advantage of it. Go over there and check it all out. You see it on Justin's boat, Pablo's boat, Al's boat. Everybody's got these. And then you're going to see him on Cliff's when he starts fishing again. You're going back home soon, right?
Yeah, a couple of weeks I'll be back in the Caribbean.
Yeah, so you guys fish a lot of lobsters down there, right?
Yeah, so so I dive for him, just shore dive for him quite a bit. And then one of my daughters, she's just now 12. She loves diving for him. And I don't, it's interesting, Dave. I don't know. You guys catch one species of spiny lobster. Is that correct?
Yes.
So it's interesting, man. In the Caribbean, there's two different kinds. There's a small one, like a little small one that has much more little white little dots all over their legs. They're really pretty, but only like a big one is that big. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And they're by Puerto Ricans call them all sorts of different names, but I'm trying to think what the actual name is. But so we have the bigger spinies, and then we have those. And my daughter loves diving for the smaller spotted ones. They taste really good. And the other thing is they don't, like, how spinies, I don't know if you've ever dived for them, but a lot of times spinies, you can see their antennas from the surface, and then you can dive on them. Those little guys, if you're not diving for them at night, if you're diving them during the day, you got to really get down there and look. You know what I mean? And then my daughter's got, she's small, so she can get up in those caves and get the ones that are way up in there and get her arm up in there where nobody else can. So we dive for both of them.
Okay. And then is there a size limit on the little guys too?
So there isn't in the state waters of Puerto Rico, the smaller ones, there isn't a size limit. So we just have a size limit on spinies.
Right. Is it the same as ours? 3 1/4 inch?
It's 3.5.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And
one of our most controversial videos about lobster was my good buddy Mike Lewis and his wife Jamie. They got a nice lobster. They called me up. We were talking on the phone. I go, "Hey, make me a video real quick of popcorn lobster leg."
oh yeah.
And oh my gosh, because we took the leg off the lobster while it was alive, because you cannot eat them if that thing dies with his legs on, or if he dies with his tail, you can't eat it. It gets toxic. At least that's what we were taught since the beginning of time. So you want to eat these things while they're alive. Boil them alive, drop them in the boiling water alive, or remove the tail from them, and we put it in the microwave there. I don't know, we got 4 million views on that thing, and you would not believe, probably 20,000 comments about how dare we do that to a live animal. Oh, it's a crustacean. They're like cockroaches. They're all over the bottom. It's like, come on, folks. And then this one, how to clean the poo out.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Lordy. We're sodomizing the lobster, I think, is the number one thing we hear.
The crazy thing about it, though, man, like using the antenna to get the poop shoot out like you're showing, and that lobster trick, dude, they both work. So I think they're like, from a content perspective, Dave, they're super interesting to watch, even if you're not into outdoor stuff. But they actually work, man. Like I tried your lobster deal, and I was like, holy shit, Dave's not making this up. Like this is a good way. Because, I mean, the reality is those big lobsters, they have a lot of meat in the legs, but most people just throw them away.
Right.
Because it's just a pain in the butt to get it out. But that method works great.
No, I remember how excited you called me right out. You're like, oh my gosh, it works. I'm eating the leg right now. The kids can't wait for me to put another one in the
mouth. Yeah. No, it does work. So that's like, those are great videos, man.
Yeah,
it is crazy. It is really funny. It kind of triggered me, Dave, because like the one with the antenna, like I think that's so cool, right? Like you can get the the dirty stuff out of the tail with the antenna. I can't tell you how many people, I've done videos on it too. I pull it out and the comments are just like, oh, this guy has no idea what he's doing. When he pulls that out, it just squeezes all the poo like into the tail. And I'm like, what are they talking about? But whatever. You have to laugh at that. I don't know if you've noticed, Dave, but I've made it a hobby to go to your videos and talk trash.
Yeah. I know. You get them all,
and a lot of people think I'm serious.
And you get people so wound up. We see it all the time, Cliff, and I love it because it just causes them to just go absolutely. But you're like the trigger. You're like the trigger point. They just go bananas. Yeah. So let's go back to some of the stuff that you're doing out there and talk to Elliot's going to put up some of your stuff. So here we are. What do we got here? What's that?
Yeah, so that's a cow elk that we just killed. And this is like an example of what I'm trying to do more and more of. So I took a couple out, and they're Jake and Logan Paul. A lot of people know Jake and Logan Paul. They're their parents. And they've never shot an elk before. And I took them on this hunt. That's what I did the last week or so. And we had a blast, man. And this is like they've Kelly has not hunted a lot. Greg has hunted a little bit. Or excuse me, I don't think Kelly's hunted really at all big game, and Greg's hunted a little bit over his life for big game, mostly whitetail. So that's all this stuff you're seeing in the last week or so is from that hunt, Dave. And I love doing that. If I could do that for the rest of my life, man, just take people who it's kind of the way I describe it is like they have excitement for hunting like a kid would. You know what I mean? Like a 13, 14-year-old kid who's just obsessed with it. Like that's how I was when I was a kid, man. I was begging my dad to go hunting. And my dad was in the business, so he was worn out with hunting. Like he didn't really necessarily want to take me hunting all the time. But I had the excitement. And I love taking adults that have that same excitement, man, because they're new to it. And that's what this is. We went and shot 2 bulls and 2 cows and did the whole process with them. And they had a blast.
And just as a food source, what an amazing food source.
What's that?
He said Jake and definitely Elliot.
Oh yeah, Elliot. Yeah. So like Jake's the guy who's about to fight
Mike
Tyson. Yeah. Yep. So it was cool. It was cool because we sent some of the meat back to the boys and that sort of thing. So it was all good.
Yeah, Cliff and I were talking when I was trying to get him to come on the show again. He was telling me that's what he was doing. He was with Jake and
with their parents.
with the parents elk hunting. He said, yeah, I'll be done with the hunt. I'd love to come on the show on Friday. I was like, no way. You got to talk about what it was like hanging out with their parents. So what do the parents think of the boys? Are they pretty proud of them? Because they made a big name for themselves, right?
Yeah, for sure, man. And you know, I would call Greg a good friend of mine. Kelly too. I don't know her as well. Like this is the first trip I did with her, but yeah, we talk about that stuff a lot. And you know, Greg raised those boys really almost as like a single dad, amongst other things. And so I think he's very proud of them for good reason. You know what I mean? And you know, I think not I mean, he's a really interesting guy. You'd enjoy talking to him, Dave. He sacrificed a lot for those kids, and I think to some extent, like this hunt is a function of that. Like he loves hunting, he loves being outdoors, and he's finally able to do some of that. And so that's kind of what this is, man. Like he's postponed a lot of his life to to help raise those kids, be a part of their life, be an advocate for them and all their business stuff. So yeah, it's cool. It's cool to get a perspective from somebody that's got, it's kind of it's a different dynamic, right? Because Greg's not well known, and his kids are some of the most famous people on earth now. But they're good people. I think, not to like get too deep in it, but I know the boys too, and you got to remember that they're partly what they do is a little bit of a they're in the business and they're in the content business, and they don't share the same demographic that me and you do, Dave. So I think some people construe that as like, oh, they're weird or wild, they're just crazy kids. It's like, nah, they're good. They're good. From my experience, man, they're good. They're good people.
They're super intelligent. They were out in front of this when me and you were thinking YouTube. What do you mean YouTube?
Yeah.
The hell up. These guys took it to a whole different level. They're the biggest influencers on the planet. They can't go, those two can't go anywhere without people knowing them. I mean, it would be, for me, I don't know. I would love to be just kind of half of what those two guys are. And they take it to a different level. And I know this fight they got coming up with Mike Tyson is going to be incredible. The amount of money that's going to generate for everybody that's even close. Those guys, wherever they go, they generate a phenomenal amount of money for everybody, not just them. Wherever they go, they generate. That's a cool thing. I mean, their mom and dad have to be super stoked.
Yeah, of course, man. Yeah. And they're I mean, just so everybody knows, and I guess because you asked, Dave, like they're very much advocates of fishing, and I've dove with Logan quite a bit. He likes spearfishing.
Cool.
And so they're the things that we enjoy, your audience enjoys, they're advocates of. It's not a big part of their life because the guys are freaking crazy busy. You know what I mean? But they enjoy that stuff too. So it's all good.
That's good that they got that going on too. So they're on that other side of the fence. Besides being phenomenal content creators, that they're outdoorsmen too. That's pretty damn cool.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So that's pretty dang cool. So when you get back home, what's the weather going to be like at home?
In Puerto Rico?
Yeah.
Well, right now, man, I'm in Oregon. It's starting to cool off. So down there, it'll just be nice.
Okay.
post hurricane season, and you know how it is.
That meat.
Just what's that?
Look at that meat right there. It just makes my mouth water. Oh my God.
Those are elk tenderloins.
Oh, damn. Like our good friend Jeanette on here just said, you never get a recall on the animals that you hunt, huh?
No, you don't, man. But the other thing is, it's just, I mean, I think everybody should try to get your own meat a little bit, even outside of that, outside of the practical, safety stuff or whatever. It's just cool to go do it.
Have you ever gone spearfishing up in Alaska?
Yeah, dude. So I just saw that message from Brent, and it pulled my eye, because I know some guys that do spearfish for halibut in Alaska, and it's on my bucket list. I would love to do it. So Brent, if you want to do it, hit me up, man. Or it sounds like you may have done it. I'd love to do it.
He has the most. He showed me a picture, sent me a video. eating the tongue of this 200-pound plus halibut that he got. It was just, he got to go up there and do that right before like a month before I went up there. What do we got there? Some poo?
Oh yeah, no, that was so what that is at least I found this funny. I guess the content world did it. But so pinion nuts are going off this year, which I don't, are you familiar with what a pinion pine is, Dave?
No.
So a pinion pine, it's in the like the usually, lower elevations of the mountains. Like most people are associated with like winter range for deer and elk. And a lot of people will call it pinion juniper. And that's like sagebrush, pinion pine, juniper. Some people call them cedar, but the pinion pine, it's got a pine cone on it. And just under certain conditions, that pine cone will produce a pinion nut. And to me, it's like a large sunflower seed that tastes a little bit like a cashew. It's really good. It's easy to roast and stuff. But anyways, what I did in that video, it wasn't well executed, so I didn't trick them. But you want to get the dark pinion nuts because the other ones aren't quite ripe. And what I did, man, is I picked up some elk shit and I stuck it in my hand there with some pinion nuts. I was trying to get Greg to accidentally eat one. I know that's probably inappropriate, but what are you gonna say?
No, it's not. It's perfect.
He didn't fall for it, but I tried.
We do that with the lobsters. We tell people you got to taste this, then lick the shell, and then your mouth is numb for hours.
Hold on, what? Explain. Give me the explanation because I gotta use that one.
Yeah, if you look at Justin's videos, he tries to trick when we're doing the live hoop netting trips. He's always trying to get people to taste that lobster, and he got his kid to do it once. His son Rylan does it every once in a while for the camera, and then when you lick it, you're licking the sewage off the bottom of the ocean. Pretty much is what you're doing because they're living in that muck and that scum down there, and then your mouth gets all numb from whatever that garbage is that they're got on it. It's not a fun event, but you can trick people into doing it. It's pretty funny. It's pretty funny stuff.
Dude, that kind of reminds me of the first wahoo I shot, Dave. The guys convinced me to eat the heart.
Eat the heart. Yep.
Basically, it was still pumping or whatever. Dude, that thing, I don't know if you do that too with fish.
With the tuna. Yeah. Everybody's got to eat the heart.
I think it's pretty gross, man. I've eaten a lot. That's pretty gross.
It's pretty horrible. They're not too bad cooked, but boy, to eat it while it's still thumping.
Yeah.
Not good. Not good. What are we doing here?
Oh, you're looking at the videos here. Oh, these are all from archery elk season, man. Calling in elk.
So you're doing it with bow and arrow also, besides with the gun that I saw earlier.
Yeah, most of September we hunt elk with a bow. And then some of those rifle hunts. So it's their breeding season. During September, the rut is mainly during September, goes into like the first week of first like week and a half of October. Kind of depends on what region you're in. But they're susceptible to, they're a little more susceptible to hunting, Dave, because they're vocal, so they're easier to find, and then you can call them in.
Yeah, that animal got very close to you. Look at
yeah. I was laughing because if you watch that video, that bull, he's all beat up. He's been gored on the side. He's got a bunch of holes in his cape on the side where other bulls were beating on him, and then he's got one of his antlers is broken off.
So you were doing him a favor by taking him, right?
Nah, we didn't shoot that one. We let him go. But I just thought it was interesting to watch him because I bugled at him. That's like the male elk sound. They bugle. Okay. And I bugled at that bull, and even though he was so beat up, he turned around, bugled right back at me like he wanted to fight again. And I was like, man, talk about balls. You got your antler broken off, and you're all beat up, and you're still ready to go for it.
Then you're like, I can't take this guy. He's too cool, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. We give him a couple years. He's too much of he's out there fighting the good fight,
So what's up with this ring right here?
Oh yeah, dude, that's Derek Wolf's Super Bowl ring. And so he had me on his podcast a couple weeks ago, a month ago or so. And Derek's kind of I think a long-term hunter, but a newer elk hunter And same deal, just he's got the elk hunting bug. So I went and visited him. He's a great guy.
All right, there you go. Because I was like, what is that ring all about? All right, there you go. Nice rainbow in the background. So how many months or how many days a year are you taking people elk hunting?
Yeah, I mean it kind of varies a little bit, but I'm trying to limit my guiding to like 25 days or so, Dave. I might be doing a little bit more than that, 40 days of it some years where I'm personally guiding. I just have so much going on. You know what I mean? It's hard when I'm in the field, like right now, dude, I'm in depths of catch-up mode. I'm sure you felt with that over your life too.
Oh yeah, you're riding a moose. How? I thought
Nah, no, dude, that's
animal on the
not
planet.
me. That's not me. That's some Russian guy riding a moose. I don't
Oh,
know how he did that.
oh, okay, all right. I was like, what the? And it's got a baby. Oh my gosh. Okay, all right.
I have
That's
no
some
idea.
wild ass shit.
I reposted that one because I had the exact same response as you.
Yeah, I don't get it. I was told stay as. Oh, there you go. That's what you want to do.
Oh,
Get
I
those.
caught a sturgeon.
No way. I just saw that real quick. Elliot showed it for a second. Where'd you get the sturgeon at? That's a
Yeah,
bucket list fish for me.
yeah. So this was an interesting trip,
Right
man.
there.
So I got this call. Yeah, I was just jumped in the water with it there to get some photos. In that particular area, you can't take. I don't know the universal rules in other spots, but that area you can't take them out of the water. And so that's why we caught him at night there, obviously, right at sunset. And so we just had to take pictures of him in the water. But that trip was interesting, Dave. So I had a call from my buddy, and he's like, "Hey, do you want to go try to spear a freshwater world record?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, sure." And obviously, it wasn't sturgeon because they're not legal to spearfish, but there's a couple other species that you can legally spear. So we actually took a jet boat into that area and we speared this river like in the rapids, and it was a totally new experience, but it was fun, man. We didn't like the species we were looking for. We didn't get any that were like in the realm of breaking the record, but it was an epic trip, man. Like it took kind of spearfishing to a whole new level because we'd literally like drift the rapids, and it's like a real pretty significant river, and we shot a bunch of carp and that sort of thing. But anyways, we sturgeon rod and reel fished at night, and we caught that sturgeon. It was pretty fun, man.
And what were you looking for to spear? Because I was watching the video. Maybe you said it, but I didn't hear it. What was the record fish you were looking for while you're
Yeah,
doing
dude. So I purposely didn't mention it.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. I didn't want to.
Yeah, no.
I'm watching videos and I'm like, and I love that goat hunt. When I watched that last year, I was just like, that is insane on that side
mountain
of that
goats.
hill. Unbelievable how you get that animal out of there. I don't get it.
You know what's so funny about this stuff, Dave? Like I was talking to one of my buddies who I dive with in Puerto Rico, and he has a lot of the same kind of reactions to this hunting stuff. But dude, when I'm in a boat and the waves are big or like stuff that's basic to you, I'm like, holy shit, I don't know how these guys deal with this.
Oh my God. Yeah. When I watched you hunt that goat on the side of that cliff, I just was like, you got to be really. When all the time, all your hunt videos are just incredible. If you think about it in your head, gang, and you think about where he's getting these animals at, and then because you're the guide, yeah, you got your horse with you or you got your mule with you, but still, you got to get your ass down there where that animal is. You got to carve them up. You got to pack them out of there, and you got to get up the hill. That is unbelievable. That's your dad?
Yeah, it's my dad, man. That's back in the day. And he packed that mountain goat out whole on the top of a little horse.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of like it probably doesn't really significant, like if you're not into mountain goat hunting or you're not familiar with the terrain, that is a very unique picture. Like that you do not get them out with a horse. You know what I mean? I think that's just because they live in like the gnarliest shit. And sorry, I apologize, man, if I
You've said it so many times. We're not
I'm
even
sorry.
talking.
I just realized I'm probably causing problems. My bad, man.
It's okay.
But
Hey,
go ahead.
do you got a few minutes to go over the hour?
Yeah, I'm fine, man.
Yeah, Elliot says we got demonetized 1 minute into the show. Don't worry about it.
What? Just my presence demonetized me.
Yeah, but my buddy Justin, I don't know, Justin, if you got that heat exchanger in or not, but I would love for you to come on here because of the hunter that you are. If you have a couple seconds, you know how to get on the show. Elliot will tap you in here if you want to jump on here and ask some key questions. But which states do you hunt these elk in?
So yeah, historically, the vast majority of my guiding was in Colorado. But I nowadays I guide them in New Mexico a little bit. I should say that I set up hunts in New Mexico. Still do some guiding in Colorado, and then I guide a bunch in Eastern Oregon.
Okay. Eastern Oregon, is that elk there too?
Yeah, that's elk. So Oregon's interesting because it has two different subspecies of elk. It has Roosevelt's on the coast, and then it has Rocky Mountain elk, the same subspecies that's in Colorado and the rest of the West. They have in Eastern Oregon.
Okay. Then what about Bend? Or remember, I talked to you a little bit about Bend, Oregon. That's where my son lives, and he has all the guns, and he tries to hunt. He tries to do it the best he can, but he's not a hunter. I didn't have any ability to help him with that. We did a ton of fish killing, but the whole hunting thing. What can he look for in that Bend, Oregon area? Is it just deer?
Yeah, no, Bend, and then to the east, they've got a lot of elk, and then as you go toward like La Grande in more of the mountainous part of Oregon, if he's an Oregon resident, like he has options to hunt elk, but there's elk, deer, lots of black bears in Oregon. Like I said, Dave, like hunting, there's everybody has access. I mean, dude, even I hate to say it because California is so brutal on the outdoorsman, but California has phenomenal hunting too. The only challenge there is that there's not real good access for a hunter. But man, anywhere you're at, there's some species to go hunting for.
Our one friend who's a big hunter, Jason Cutter, he's asking a question. I don't know if you see it there. Do you ever hunt?
I haven't hunted Maine. But I would love to. I like Jason's other comment, man. I love hunting. Hunting is a spiritual event. It's funny, dude. It sounds woo-woo, Dave, but it kind of is. That's really like the only way to describe it, particularly if you haven't done a lot of it. Everything, you do it a lot, you get used to it. Maybe you kind of look past some of the more significant parts of it. But for newer people, like it really is. It's kind of transformational. Fishing's the same way. First time somebody catches a fish, fillets it, they're like, oh, okay. This is like part of being a human.
Right. And for me, the whole night diving thing was very spiritual. Whenever I night dived for lobster back in the day, it was just like you can't get any closer to the spirit than being in the water in the nighttime in the dark and everything's just slowed down and super quiet. It's got to be the same thing hunting. I know it's the same thing when you're out on the boat by yourself fishing. Look at this. What do we got here? A whole family coming in.
Oh yeah, those are elk coming in.
And that's all because of your bugling?
Yeah, and that video is just about a calling strategy. There's like, it's weird. I mean, it's just like fishing strategies, Dave. Like there's this one, like this call-in strategy that I talk about in this video. And it's funny because probably you deal with this too. There's probably people that hate the fact that I'm mentioning this strategy because it so consistently works. But what's interesting is that if you hear calf elk, if you mimic their, you don't have to mimic the sound exactly, but because it's hard, like it's, every elk has its own voice, but if you mimic the intensity of their calls, what'll happen is these little groups of calf elk, they'll come in. And then when they come in, a lot of times a bull will show up silently. And it's like a deadly tactic. When you're having a really hard time calling in bull elk, but you hear calves, you can mimic the calves, they'll come directly in, and then bulls will come in silently. It's a really interesting it's amazing how well it works, and that's what that video is about. But what's crazy, not to get like crazy off, off on a tangent here, is it took me a while to figure out, why it worked. And I was talking to a biologist, and he told me what happens is when the female elk go into estrus, they'll temporarily wean their calves. They kind of kick the calves out. So what happens is these calves will be running around, and they're kind of frantic to find other elk or re-find their mom. So they're real vocal. And when you call them in, what happens is the bull elk, they hear those calves talking, and it's not, the bull elk are not, they have no sexual interest in the calves, but they know those calves symbolize that somewhere in the vicinity there's a cow that's in estrus, because that's why she's kicked the calves away. And that's why that's like so deadly.
I don't know. You read my mind. I'm like, why would they do that? But that makes all the sense in the world. They're kind of
yeah. It's not that it's a pedophile elk. It's that it symbolizes something else. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, that's so interesting, Cliff. Your whole life's been doing this, so everything you're talking about is absolutely as real as it gets. There's no hide the ball. You don't play hide the ball. That's what I loved about you when we first sat down and talked, was you just leave it all out there. Kind of like, gang, this is it. This is it. You like it. You don't like it. This is it. Which you're, like you said, a lot of people probably don't appreciate that you're doing that and you're letting everybody into your world, but you've lived such a blessed life and got to do your passion for so long that, yeah, the next step is to teach people. And that's all we got is our story at the end of the day. And the people that hate you for that, so be it. They're just jealous. That's what I think, because I get the same kind of hatred that we talked about it before we went live. It's just crazy that people are mad at me for teaching people how to fish, and the same thing's got to be going on with you for elk hunting. Those weirdos out there, those purist hunters, don't you tell them why. And right now you're probably in big trouble for sharing a little bit about the babies.
Yeah, oh yeah, sure. It's the same deal.
It's just funny. It's so funny, and it's the more popular you get, the more views you get, the more those people on the outside, they can't figure out that you built a better mousetrap. You've just got to the point in your life. Like when we talked a year and a half or 2 years ago, when you were on the podcast the first time, you were working your way to a point where you didn't have to do 100 hunts a year. You didn't have to anymore because you got kids. You want to be home. You want to spend time with the family. You want to take your boy fishing. You want to take your daughter diving. You can't do that when you're out there elk hunting 150 days a year.
Right. Oh, yeah. Sure. It's just a practical aspect of it. I mean, you've gone through the same transition. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. No, it's fun to watch. It's fun to watch your channel grow. It's fun to watch all the things that I'm learning from watching you. Is that your boy?
Yeah, that's Wyatt with his first tarpon.
I want one. I jumped a couple before, but I never caught one.
Dude, this is like a I guess I would call it like a juvenile tarpon. Maybe I'm naive, but what's crazy, Dave, like this day, I'm gonna have to tell the story. Do we got a minute?
Yeah. No, we got all the time in the world, buddy.
Dude. So he loves fishing. We go snapper fishing and stuff, and we go casting that bait. We do the whole thing. He loves it. And dude, well, I'll tell two stories. So his sister, we cast netted a bunch of bait, and we had a bunch of live bait in a bucket with a little bubbler, And this tarpon, we were walking along in a bigger tarpon, probably like a 50-pounder, just boiled behind us, just turned like that. And I watched his 12-year-old sister literally reach into the bucket, grab a pilchard out, throw it on the hook, and toss it in front of this tarpon and hook it. It was like, I was like, just looked at her. I'm like, what did you just do? That was awesome. She hooked it, and it just it beelined, did a big tarpon jump, snapped off. But she was just like, holy crap. You know what I mean? And anyways, ever since that, my son, he's like, oh, I want to be the first one of us to land a tarpon. And I think it was like the last day I was in Puerto Rico last season, and it was rainy, just kind of rainy. And that might've been a factor that I didn't understand, but we go down and we're looking at this, just the head of the marina there. And, I'm watching it, and I swear to you, Dave, these small tarpon that like he has there, 30 of them jumped at once, like synchronized. Like it was crazy to me, and I was watching them, and what they were doing is that the school of tarpon was working bait like into a corner, and then they would hit it all at once, like jump out of the water. And it was just like timing. They were all in there, and my son caught 4 or 5 of them that
No
size.
way.
Yeah, it was freaking
Oh
awesome.
my gosh. You guys
Yeah.
don't understand. If you've never fished for tarpon, just to catch one is a huge event.
Oh yeah, sure.
Your guy caught 4 or 5.
Yeah, a lot, those smaller ones right there, but awesome.
It doesn't matter. Those things are the most hardest fish just to get them to take, let alone to catch. They, like we all call them, we jump to tarpon. A lot of people, you jump on that because it jumps up and it throws your hook. Their jaw is like rock hard.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting you say that, Dave, because see that lobster that Elliot's showing right now, that's the small lobster. And that's a big one. Okay. I'm putting it back because it has eggs, but that's a large one of those little lobsters. They're got little white spots on them. See all the white spots on their yeah, they're beautiful little lobsters. It's kind of hard to describe the difference between spinies, but when you see them, it's super obvious. Like it's very obvious that they're not a spiny. But yeah, you can see the thing,
white spots all over them. Yeah.
Yeah. And the name's not like popping in my head. I see Brent's question, the biggest lobster. So the biggest lobster I've grabbed, it's on my Instagram, the video of me grabbing it. And I want to say it was like 5 pounds. It's funny because I sent it to you, Dave, and then you sent me a picture back of like a gigantic lobster. Made me feel like a stooge.
Yeah, Kelly had that 18-pounder, so I always throw that picture out when people are throwing pictures out.
I think that's the biggest one I've caught, right? Not that one, the one in my other hand. Yeah, let's see here.
Yeah,
that one. Yeah.
So just for comparison, look at that. Legal, maybe 1/2 inch plus, bigger than legal, and then that's how big they'll get. So that's a beast.
Dave, they get 5 times that size.
That's a beautiful bug. Those lobster legs are phenomenal when they're that big, aren't they?
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. There's a lot of meat in them. You know what? I want to hear your opinion on this, Dave, because I know this is also like a regional thing. In Puerto Rico, like a lobster like that, obviously, if it doesn't have eggs, very normal to take it. Like everybody will take them. You know what I mean? In California, that's not the norm. Is that right?
No.
Explain. Yeah, but give me the rundown, man.
Okay, well, we have commercial fishermen here. And
yeah.
Our coastline is inundated with massive amounts of commercial lobster traps. They're not throwing back lobsters with the eggs in them. Okay. I've been taught that since I was a little kid. And if you dive here in California, it is amazing the volume of lobsters. People don't understand it. Brent, he does because he's under the water a lot. But when I grew up, we were under the water all the time. When God would turn the lights off, we went in the water because the bottom of the ocean, people can't even understand it. It's alive. Sure. The sand is just alive with lobsters, just alive. And there's thousands of them. And so when you catch one with eggs, and I wanted to say something, that was very nice of you to put that lobster back with the eggs. My boys have had to stop me before because I'm throwing them in the bag when they got eggs. I don't even slow down because that's how I was raised. It doesn't matter. One lobster lays 1 billion eggs. There's zillions of them here in Southern California. The lobster thing here is so regulated, and the 1.25 inches, we know that animal's had laid eggs 4 times before we take them. So we know that and maybe more. The science is as good as it can be. So we take them with the eggs, and if the fish, and I'm going to just say it. If the Fish and Wildlife was that worried about it, they would end the season in February instead of March, because from February 1st till March, every lobster's got eggs. Every single lobster has eggs.
Okay.
Female. They all got eggs. When you pop the tail and pull them out, you got these big, long red lines coming out of them. Those are the eggs getting ready to get mature to put in the tail to be fertilized. So if the Fish and Wildlife doesn't care, I'm sorry. I'm only allowed to have 7.
Yeah.
Okay. And when you get down on the bottom and you're looking around and there's hundreds of thousands of them and you're going to pick the 7 biggest ones because that's all you're allowed to have, you're not going to adversely affect the population if you take them with the eggs in them. To see you putting the lobster back with the eggs, I think a lot of your videos where you're butchering the animal and cutting the meat up, that should be like the first thing they see is, look, I care so much about the environment. I'm putting the lobster back with eggs in it, but I'm going to take this bull elk. So what are you talking about, folks?
Yeah. I mean, and the thing is Dave, like some of this stuff, the reason I asked you, and I think it's an interesting conversation, is I do, like, obviously we all follow the laws, right? Like we follow the laws. And like I see there's some message about Florida, like, yeah, you for sure got to put them back if they have eggs. In Puerto Rico, same deal. You got to put spinies back if they have eggs. But the thing is beyond the laws, man, I just follow whatever the culture is. Like if I'm in the Caribbean or I'm in, Costa Rica or whatever, I just ask guys, because to me, it's amazing how much it's varied, like, oh, you should, like, we don't do that here. I'm like, all right, well, just got to tell me, you know what I mean? I do like whatever aligns with like what's the cultural norm,
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm the other guy. I'm the guy that's trying to get everybody to react to everything.
Sure.
One of my favorite pictures is me holding up 2 5-pound females and their tails are corroded. They got so many eggs in their tails you can't even believe it. And I'm sorry, and it's going to offend a lot of you, but I show me dropping them both in boiling hot water.
Well, I mean, the thing is like, I'm not offended by it because I'm open to hearing the other side of the story, which I think sometimes is like very relevant. Like, hey, are we actually doing this for a valid reason or not? I don't know. I don't have the depth of knowledge. You know what I mean?
Well, the amount of I don't know. I've never dove where you're at. I've seen videos.
Sure.
Here's Kelly's giant lobster. I think this is the picture I sent you.
Oh, yeah.
And that's not even her big one. That one's only 13 pounds. Her big one was 18 and 3/4 pounds. And
that's wild.
We have that picture somewhere, but this is a monster lobster. She caught that in Dana Point Harbor. Pretty
okay.
Crazy. But when you dive Dana Point Harbor, it's so crazy. We have a big, long break wall, about 1.5 miles long. And when you're out in front of that at night and you're on the bottom and it's all sand, and the sand looks like it's moving. There's so many lobsters. There's just thousands and thousands of them. You go over to San Clemente Island, you dive in Northwest or in Pyramid Cove at night in 12, 15 feet of water in the eelgrass, and the eelgrass is covered with thousands of lobsters. There's just the amount of lobsters and the amount of regulations. And the commercial guys here in California, they can have as many as they want every day, as many as they want.
Okay.
You and we can have 7, period. End of story. We can't have any more. We can't. It could be the greatest night of diving in our lives. We can only have 7. So I'm like, why are we so regulated? And they're not. It's because we can't agree on anything. There's so many people here right now that are going to be mad at me for killing lobsters with eggs in them. And we won't agree on anything. But the commercial guys, they won't allow you. They just put a restriction on them now. They can only use 300 traps per boat. Per permit. That's all. In the day, buddy that was on here Monday that I interviewed, Bob Lorman, he told the story about how he had 750 lobster traps, commercial lobster traps at one point. That's how many he fished.
Yeah.
250 out of Dana Point alone. The lobster fishery is phenomenal. They are a cockroach. They're everywhere. The only thing is lack of knowledge. People just don't have the knowledge. They just think that you're going to destroy the planet Earth if you take a lobster that has eggs in it. It's not the case. Dude,
I love hearing the other perspective, Dave. Because I'm like on that particular niche, like I'm naive, man. I've just done what the norm is. You know what I mean?
Well, also, you don't want to get your ass kicked when you're diving over there and you bring in that lobster with all the eggs in it, and the culture's telling you we don't take those, and you're like, well, I want to be part of the culture. I don't want to.
Well, yeah, and you get that dynamic. I see. Yeah, you get that dynamic. That's part of what it is. You know, somebody takes you to a spot like, dude. A lot of the people in the Caribbean in general, I've found to be like very like great in terms of outdoors people. Like they want to show you the spots. They want to have fun with you. Like I'm very, I really appreciate that. But the dynamic you're talking about is super relevant. Like if you do something that's like against what their kind of deal is, it's an issue. You know what I mean? But I'm sure the same dynamic exists, Dave. Like the commercial guys there probably don't follow any rules, to be honest. I don't know, but I'm guessing that dynamic kind of exists.
Well, they're not throwing back legal lobsters.
No,
they're just not. They're just not. Their whole life depends on them catching the legal lobsters. So they're not throwing back legal lobsters, and they're not throwing back. The other thing that's funny is people out here on the West Coast are always so proud of themselves for throwing a big lobster back. Oh, I threw it back. It's a breeder. Are you out of your flipping mind? If that thing crawled in a commercial trap, those guys aren't throwing it back. They're $27 a pound right now off the boat.
Yeah.
Throwing a 10-pound lobster back. The only reason they're not catching the 10-pounders is because the funnel going into the trap isn't big enough for it to get in there. A couple of my guys that I know real well, they'll fish some spots where they know the big ones are with bigger funnel, but they'll only have 2 or 3 traps in their arsenal with the big funnels, but they want the big ones too. It's not gonna, that's the thing, gang. I'm sorry. I'm only going to tell truth. Just like Cliff's not going to wipe out the elk by hunting with getting 1 or 2 with his client or however many it's allowed to get. I'm not going to destroy the population of the lobsters. Believe me, I've tried for the last 50 years, and every time I would go in the water, and now we hoop net all the spots. Yeah, they're still there. We're still catching them.
Sure, in the big that's what my original
we got to show you this. We got to show you this speech real quick before you
go for it, man.
This is funny. This is the speech I did with the war heroes on water. Check this out, and then I want to hear what you're saying.
Yeah, sure.
Not diversely affect the population.
Okay, I saw this one.
This is a fishing pole. You cannot diversely affect the population of fish in the ocean with one, and he's not even Anthony. Okay, so don't buy into the crap they're trying to feed you. It's a bunch of crap, Lasley. He's been killing stuff for longer than I've been alive, and they're still there. He's a whole bunch of them. Okay? Do not buy into that baloney. I'm going to do my very best not to cuss. I'm doing my best. All right? But I'm just trying to help. Okay? You will not diversely affect the population of fish in the ocean with a fishing pole. Do you own that? Jimmy Decker! Yes. It's okay to kill calico bass. I've been killing them for 44 years, and every time I go there, they're still there. Every Benny, I see Benny. He says he throws bologna. He eats them. I see them.
Yeah, that's kind of my take on the whole thing. We're so overregulated, and we can't affect. And I used the wrong word. I meant adversely, not diversely. I was so excited to get up and all those war heroes and talk. So yeah, I used the wrong words, gang. But that's my take on the whole thing. Is we're the most overregulated sport fishermen, sport hunters. We're the most overregulated human beings on the planet Earth. We have no effect on the population of anything. But go ahead. What were you gonna say? I'm sorry.
Oh no, dude. I think it's interesting, Dave, because I mean, you're open to talking about it, so we can talk about that topic. A lot of people just don't want to talk about it because there's kind of like, I guess there's like they just don't want to like raise hell about it. But the thing is that there is a negative side of all the regulation. And I'm all for like protecting fisheries, protecting, the elk populations, deer populations, all that. I think me and you are in agreement on that.
Oh,
but the overcomplication, particularly for newer people, man, it deters them from getting into it. I mean, I went crab diving up in the Puget Sound, and it was a blast. You know, we were free diving for crabs. It's like, it's like the hardest way to do it, but for Dungeness crab. And I'm sitting there, Dave, and I'm like, okay, they got to be male, or they got to be males. They got to be this size. They can't be soft. And I'm like, this is too much. You know what I mean? Like it's just like a bunch of, it seems like such an abundance of complication where it makes it kind of not fun for people. You know what I mean? And I think in the case that you're talking about, where the sportsman take really doesn't move the needle, like, why have the complication? Because it does affect people's willingness to get into the activity for sure.
Right. And like you said, everyone's afraid to talk about it. Everyone's scared to death to talk about it, bring up the topics, say what is really going on. You're out there in nature. You're out there seeing it. The really sad thing is when they start to make regulations, they don't come and talk to you. When they start to make regulations, I used to pride myself on going out of a different harbor every day, where in our industry, a lot of guys have their harbor. Their harbor's Ventura Harbor. Their harbor's San Diego Harbor. Their harbor's Newport Harbor. When I was doing the guide service thing, I was in San Diego one day. I was in Newport the next day. I was in Oxnard the next day. Then I was back in Dana Point. Then I was up in Long Beach. And then, so I was seeing stuff that no one else was seeing. And I was seeing the diversity of what's going on out there. But when they set up the regs or they set up the rules, they never go, hey, maybe we should talk to Dave, or maybe we should talk to Cliff. Hey, we want to know more about the elk. Does anybody ever ask you? Wildlife?
It's the same dynamic.
They don't come to the guys that are out there doing it. You got guys sitting in an office pushing pencils around that have never gone outside, and they're white as this roll of paper towels. I'm sorry, I don't want to know what that guy knows about outside. If you're this color, I don't want to know what you know about outside. I just don't want to know, because you don't know. But they're the ones that are making the regulations. They're the ones that are teaching our children. They're telling them that you're bad because you go out and you get your elk and then you guys sit around and eat that animal that your father killed. You're a horrible little boy and a horrible little girl. What kind of a world are we facing? What are we going for? What's the end game?
Yeah, no, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I know what it kind of seems to be. You know what I mean, Dave? And we've talked about this before. For years, man, I was in denial on this subject. And I've talked about it on a bunch of different podcasts. It's like, hunting faces a lot of it, and it's been very overt for years, right? Like, they banned lion hunting in California. They banned, for the most part, bear hunting is banned in California too, because you can't hunt them with dogs. You can't bait them, so it's pretty hard to kill them. And then, as that's progressed into Colorado on different things. So there's a lot of overt things, at least from my perspective in the hunting world. I'm sure there's very overt things in the fishing world too that you see this. And I used to think it was all good intention, Dave, just like bleeding heart stuff. But now, man, just like the evidence stacks up that it's more just an attack on independence, a certain type of lifestyle. That's got to be what it is, dude. I don't know another valid explanation.
And out here in California, we're at a point now. We're at a breaking point where the regulations are going to come crashing down on us here in 2025, and it is so scary. But I got to really be careful to talk about it here on open forums, because I got kind of suppressed really bad on Facebook. I'm not
okay.
My views went from 30 million to less than 1 million in like that, because of the fact that I'm so vocal and that I'm trying to save the industry and that they don't want us to talk about it. So we got to be careful, but I'm going to talk about it today because you're here and I bring out this energy.
On the dark side, man.
Every time you and I are together, you bring out this energy in me. But there's a new thing coming down the pipe called 30 by 30 that's propped up by the federal government, and they're going to close down 30% more of our California coastline and 30% of our lakes and rivers to fishing, which is why. And then I watch a lot of because of you now, I'm staying involved in the hunting thing, and I'm watching, they're trying to shut down pretty much take of any animals. That's kind of what the United States of America is into. They don't want to take any more animals out of this ecosystem as far as fish go, or elk or deer or wolves or bears or anything. And it's like, what do you want us to eat?
I know. Well, Dave, what it is, dude, is this weird. It's this weird account. It's a weird, like I call it. It's like protein accounting, right? People, this is gonna sound weird to you, but there's weird protein accounting, and the accounting goes that if it's domestic, it doesn't count. You know what I mean? So if I'm eating domestic beef or pork, chickens, whatever, it doesn't count. But we all know it does count because like their feed or they are raised on wildlife habitat, right? So if that's what you're consuming, it doesn't mean that it's not like coming out of the ecosystem. But there's this weird deal that people have this idea that wild game is different, right? Like wild game or fish is like a totally different deal. And that is like its own resource separate. And if I only eat domestic meat, I'm not affecting that. And it's horrible protein accounting is what I would describe it as.
Right. I mean, I'm leaving tomorrow morning and I'm going up to Mag Bay, which is like Jurassic Park for fishermen and
Sure.
outdoors people, and the scallops and the lobsters and the oysters and the fish, and everything is so pristine. And I'm bringing the two of the biggest ice chests I have, because I'm stocking my freezer full of scallops and oysters and everything, because up there it's kind of wild west. It's the way it was back in the olden days. I can get 2 kilos of scallops for $7.
Sure.
How many scallops I'm getting as many $7 bags as I can. I mean,
yeah.
I guess what I'm asking, not you, but what are we saving this stuff for? What if you don't regulate? Just think if there's no regulation of the wolf, and there isn't. So now they're going to eat all the elk, all the baby elk. Like that one friend of yours, I can't remember his name, and I want to know it so bad, that talked about it on Rogan, how the elks bed it down with their babies, and there's 2 little calves suckling right there. And then here comes this black animal that they've never seen before, and they don't even know. And this thing comes in there and just eats her babies and then eats her. And that's not cool. You're not doing anything for the environment, gang. You're not doing what they reintroduced those wolves, and now those wolves are running rampant and just destroying these beautiful animals. For what? I don't get it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and they do. They right now, Colorado's having a bunch of domestic livestock issues with wolves too. It's the same dynamic. I mean, I don't know what the explanation is, Dave. Like the only thing I can tell you, man, is anybody who is engaged in the activity understands what we're talking about. If they're a fisherman, spear fisherman, hunter, it just kind of all makes sense. You know what I mean? That's the only thing I know. The more people that are engaged with it, it seems to be the better we are off. And
that's why I think it's so important for your platform and my platform. And that's why I believe we get the views we get, is because there are actually people that want to know and they want to learn, even though the social media tries to suppress what we're showing and what we're talking about. There's still a big audience that wants the truth. The truth, right?
Oh, dude, there's a huge audience of guys and gals that are active fishing, hunting, whatever. And then there's this big audience, Dave, that I know exists that has not had the opportunity to do it, but they want to so bad because they kind of just know that it's inherent, to being a person. And that's like, those are the guys, those are the folks that I like to talk to. You know what I mean? Guys that they haven't. Guys and gals that haven't been able to go fishing, go hunting or whatever, but it's totally like on their bucket list. There's a bunch of them, man.
Right. Well, when I watched you cutting those tenderloins up from that elk, oh my gosh, that meat, it just makes my mouth water, makes you so hungry. It looks way better than seeing a piece of prime rib or a piece of filet mignon. I don't know. I want to try that elk. When I slice a big chunk of yellowfin tuna off and I'm slicing it real thin and I'm putting it
Yeah,
with
it's the
the
same.
wasabi and the soy sauce. There's just nothing better, man. I can't imagine that we're not going to get to. I'm stoked that I'm old because I'm not going to be around much longer. Because you guys, those of you that are younger than us, it's up to you to try to keep this thing open. But they are on a mission to stop you guys from enjoying all the cool stuff that Cliff and I got to do our whole lives. And we're doing our very best to try to help you guys, but it's up to all of you. And I'm gonna probably get some press for this, but it comes down at the end of the day, you got to stop voting for the party and you got to start voting for what the party is doing. If you don't agree with what's going on right now, there's only one way to vote. I'm sorry. It is what it is. You can blast me all you want, but one side wants us to be able to live free and have a good time, and one side wants us to rely on the government 100%. They don't want us eating food that we go and get. They want us standing in line to get the government cheese.
Yeah, dude. I think you nailed it, man. I really don't have anything to add.
Let me just hang myself here, just staying quiet.
No, dude, I'm not staying quiet. It's just that's the
Go
case,
ahead,
man.
Dave, hang yourself. I'll watch.
No, I'm not. I mean, I'm with you, Dave. Like, look, if you want to do this stuff and it's important to you to be able to get your own food and everything else, like, for sure, half the population seems to be in disagreement on that, and that's a problem. You know, I should say at least half of like the political structure seems to be against that form of independence, and I think it's really a bummer, you know. But yeah, no, I don't disagree, man.
So if we go back to what we were talking about earlier, how hard is it to get a quote unquote tag to hunt elk? Anyway,
It depends on what state you're in. But as an American, if you're willing to travel a little bit, then you can you can get an elk tag every year. You know what I mean? It's going to be varying. It's going to be varying like the quality of the hunt. But between Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, Nevada, if a guy, you know, has a little protocol, you know, right now in the U.S. you can go elk hunting every year. You know, for fairly reasonable cost. You know what I mean?
now you're out there hunting all the time. Are you seeing more elk than you saw when you were a kid? Are you seeing less elk?
Yeah, it's super regionally based. You know what I mean, Dave? I would say that is like big macro perspective on things. There's much more. There's tends to be lower populations of elk on public land right now. Private land, big swaths of like sovereign stuff, Indian reservations, those sort of things that are tightly managed around deer and elk. Those populations, from my perspective, are rising really healthy. I mean, there's like tons of different variables that we could dive into, but probably the primary variable there between like public land and then private individuals and then, you know, other more tightly managed populations is predator control. There's been a big political shift in predator control in the deer and elk populations. And that's happened in the last 30 years. And so I think that's probably part of that dynamic. But so it's you know, elk in general are doing great across the country, but it just depends on where, you know what I mean?
Okay, and then I got one more question that we're going to end with.
Yeah.
That herd of elk that lived on Santa Cruz Island, are you familiar with those animals? They're gone now. They eradicated every one of them. They killed them all with helicopters. But
were they elk or were they mule deer?
I was told they were elk, so don't quote me. But I was told they were like a subspecies of the elk. They were a giant animal. They were like
so I could be kind of misinformed on this. I didn't know they had elk on the island. I know like Santa Rosa and all that, it used to have big giant mule deer, and they eradicated those. But I mean, I can answer even if I'm coming from a place of being somewhat naive on the details, Dave, I can answer your question. So the islands out there, like, I mean, let's see. Yeah, they want to kill all the deer on Catalina. Like Lisa just made that mention there. So,
Right.
So in general, man, there's a good. You can look at the islands where obviously they're an invasive species. Mule deer were put there. Elk, if they were there, they weren't there. They were put there. Probably for hunting back in the day. And you see this in a lot of places, man. Like New Mexico, for instance, has wild populations of oryx, aoudad, ibex, all non-native species that were put there for hunting. Yeah, it says it was elk.
Yeah, I know it was elk, and it was like a subspecies, and it was like a giant animal. And I'm just kind of, why would they eradicate? What's the point? And the environmentalists are the ones that did it. So
yeah, so a lot of this stuff, I mean, I guess to make my opinion brief, Dave, a lot of this stuff is based on like an ecosystem perspective. They want to eradicate the invasive in the hopes of bringing back this pre-human intervention ecosystem, which the reality is just a pipe dream. You know what I mean? Like, what else is going on those islands that wasn't going on 50 years ago or 100 years ago? Like a ton of things, right? Not to mention, hopefully I don't have my geography wrong, but you have like the entire Los Angeles metro area not that far away. You know what I mean? So to think that you're going to bring back a pre-human ecosystem or whatever is crazy. And I've thought about this a lot in other places too. Like New Mexico has really tried to depress their ibex population. They've worked their oryx population back too. And I don't know the explanation of it other than individual biologists are very powerful in those situations. And I think that's really too bad. You know what I mean, Dave? Because a biologist can get in his mind like, hey, the mule deer or the elk on Santa Cruz Island are detrimental to this plant. We need to eradicate the elk. And the thing is that the elk or the people who enjoy the elk or the opportunities the elk provide or whatever, they don't really have any advocacy in that decision. You know what I mean? And I think that's the problem, if that makes sense.
No, it makes all the sense in the world. That's kind of what I was hoping that you were going to say, because that's the only that makes sense. It's the only thing. So there's so many people watching right now. How can they find you? Where are you located? What's your
Yeah. So my website, pursuitwithcliff.com, that's got everything on there. My big social media platforms are just my name, Cliff Gray, on YouTube. Put that in the search engine, my channel will pop right up. And then Instagram is Cliff GRY. Those are the best bets. I have a private membership group that is pwchuntsquad.com. But you don't have to remember that. It's on all the other stuff I mentioned too. So, and there's free and paid options on there. So, any of those spots, Dave.
All right, gang. I want to thank Cliff Gray for coming on here. You're a very interesting human being. I love our chats. I love talking to you offline as much as I do online. So thank you for being my friend. Everybody, we will have our live show tomorrow morning. It's going to be call in. The members call in, talk about what they're catching. I got Robbie Gant from AFTCO going to be on the show tomorrow morning. There's a whole bunch of stuff coming down with CCA California. They're working their butts off trying to keep fishing open. They got a couple events coming up. Robbie will be talking about that, plus all the new stuff that AFTCO has out for sale. Kelly Girl and Jamie Lewis have been looking at all the new stuff. You guys will be stoked. Robbie will be talking about that. Thank you very much, Cliff, for being on the show, gang. We're going to boogie out of here. I'm going to Adolfo's Lopez Mateos tomorrow night with my good buddy Ron. He's flying in right now. We're driving up right after the show tomorrow. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Have a great day. Turn off the news. They're all lying, and we'll see you tomorrow.